All right, we're diving into something pretty wild today, a completely new playbook in finance. We're talking about a way to take a company's absolute biggest headaches, its worst problems, and literally turn them into gold. So let's jump right in.
So here's the big question, the one that's starting to make waves with a lot of financial leaders. It sounds kind of crazy, right? Can your worst problems actually become your best assets? I mean, it goes against everything we think we know. But the framework we're going to break down today says, yeah, absolutely. And if that's true, it could completely change the game for how we measure a company's worth.
Okay, before we get to the solution, we gotta understand the problem. And this problem, well, it's like a ghost haunting corporate balance sheets all over the world. A lot of the time, it's hiding in plain sight.
So think about it. A beautiful coastal property that's now facing rising sea levels. Or a massive data center that's creating a traffic jam on the power grid. These aren't just small operational issues. They're what this playbook calls stranded liabilities. Basically, they're assets that are physically there, you can touch them, but they're turning financially toxic. Their costs are just going up and up while their actual value is tanking, all because of stuff like climate change or new regulation.
Now, here's the key thing that ties all these problems together. They are all tied to a specific place. They're geo-localized. The risk, the cost, it's all pinned to a certain spot on the map. And that little detail, that geographic anchor, well, that's both their biggest weakness and, believe it or not, the secret key to unlocking their value.
So how do you fight a ghost? How do you turn it into gold? Well, this playbook introduces a new kind of machine, a purpose-built engine designed for one thing, to take that liability and totally transform it.
And that engine is called a regenerative entity, or an RE for short. The easiest way to think about it is like a spin-off company. A company takes its biggest problem child, that stranded liability, and puts it into this new, separate entity. Poof, it's off their main balance sheet. The RE's only job, its entire reason for existing, is to fix the underlying problem and, in the process, generate new value. And I want to be super clear about something, because the source material really hammers this home. This is not ESG. This isn't about looking good in a sustainability report or some green marketing campaign. Nope. This is presented as a cold, hard, numbers-driven strategy. It's all about optimizing the balance sheet, period.
All right, so let's get into the nuts and bolts. How does this conversion engine actually work? It's a four-step process that literally takes a financial drain and turns it into a source of income.
Okay, here's the flow. Step 1, the company hands off the liability to the RE, getting it off its books. Step 2, the RE gets funded, but in a really unusual way. We'll get to that. Step 3, the problem gets solved, and boom, the first dividend gets paid. And step 4, it just keeps going, becoming a long-term, self-sustaining engine for generating yield.
Okay, now we get to the magic trick. This is probably the most innovative part of the whole idea. See, the RME isn't funded with a giant pile of cash. Instead, it's powered up or capitalized with 4 totally different kinds of value, all of which can be tracked and verified. First up, you've got human capital. This is just what it sounds like. The value of people's work, their labor, their expertise in managing the project. Next, there's technological capital. Think data from sensors, automation, smart software, anything that makes the solution more efficient and effective. Then, and this is really cool, there's biological capital. This is where we actually account for the work that nature itself is doing, like a wetland planing water or trees capturing carbon. These aren't just nice ideas, they're measurable, valuable processes.
And last, we have metaphysical capital. Now, I know that sounds a little out there, but it's actually pretty concrete. It's the value of having the community on board, social agreement, basically. When everyone is aligned and supporting the solution, that is a massive asset that reduces risk and prevents all sorts of problems down the line.
So, let's recap. You take a problem, stick it in this special entity, and you power it up with these 4 unique kinds of capital. So what's the bottom line? Let's look at the payoff. What this actually looks like on the balance sheet. This table from the source material lays it out perfectly. Just look at this real estate example. Before, you're sitting on a $10 million asset that's basically bleeding $500,000 a year. But after you run it through the RE process, that $10 million liability, gone. Vanished from your balance sheet. The $500,000 annual cost, also gone. And in its place, you're now getting a $200,000 dividend check every year. Not to mention a piece of any extra value that gets created, like from carbon credits or data sales.
I mean, look at the risk profile. It just flips entirely. You go from having this huge, concentrated, volatile risk hanging over your head to just holding a piece of a new, problem-solving company. The constant drag on your operations becomes a new income stream. And your reputational liability? It turns into a story about leadership. It's a complete 180.
So what's the big takeaway here? This isn't just some clever accounting trick. The source material presents this as a whole new strategic playbook. The idea is that in the future, the most successful companies won't just be the ones that avoid risk. They'll be the ones that actively go out and mine their risks for new sources of value.
And for any financial leader watching this, the takeaways are pretty powerful. We're talking about a way to protect your portfolio from those painful write-downs, a way to turn that financial drag into productive, efficient capital. You can take these giant, scary systemic risks and break them down into smaller, solvable problems. And hey, you even end up creating a totally new kind of asset that investors have never seen before.
You know, this really changes the job description for a CFO. You're not just a steward of the company's money anymore. You become an architect. You're literally designing these new, resilient financial structures that don't just make money, but create real, lasting value by fixing really tough problems.
And that leaves us with one last big question to chew on. Is this just a clever, niche strategy for a few specific situations? Or are we looking at the beginning of a fundamental shift in how finance and capitalism work? Because if you can create a real, market-based incentive to solve our planet's toughest problems, well, then maybe the most profitable thing you can do in the 21st century isn't just managing risk, but regenerating value from it.